What's up, Star Wars fans? Today I want to talk about Episode 3 of the Book of Boba Fett, The Streets of Mos Espa. The episode description states that Boba Fett must deal with two very different threats, and that truly is the case. I absolutely love the amount of information that we get early on in this episode and the pacing. We get a short scene of the different sections of Mos Espa and who is in control of those sections. Boba then gets a quick visit from a watermonger, aka a water dealer in the city of Mos Espa, and he talks about how there's unrest in the city and that a gang of young people have been stealing his water. And then we jump directly from that meeting with the watermonger to Boba confronting that youth gang. And as Bobby V suggested in my community predictions video, we finally have the reveal of Sophie Thatcher's character as she is part of this youth gang. And as Boba Fett confronts them about the theft from the watermonger, we learn that there is very little work at all, let alone for this group of youth. Now, probably one of my favorite parts of the episode, Boba Fett actually hires these young people, which certainly pays off in this episode, but before we get to that, we have yet again another flashback. We see Boba Fett traveling to a nearby city to strike a deal with the Pike Syndicate, and upon his meeting with the Pikes, they reveal that they will pay the Tusken Raiders for protection, but that currently they're already paying the Nikto biker gang for protection, and that they're not going to be paying two different groups. Boba Fett in turn says that he'll take care of the biker gang, but upon returning to the Tusken Raider camp, he finds that the Tusken camp has been completely destroyed by the Nikto gang. And personally, I thought it was really important that we did move beyond the Tusken Raiders, and that the flashbacks had a much smaller role in this episode. And I also love that this particular flashback sets up and influences what is happening in the present day, but I'll discuss more of that in the video later. Because in the next scene we're back to present day, and Boba Fett has a rude awakening from his Bacta tank, sent by the Hutt's Black Karstantin, has somehow snuck into the palace and rips Boba Fett from his Bacta tank. Now the interesting thing is that it isn't the Gamorrean guards or Fennec Shand that come to Boba's rescue. It's actually the gang that he just hired off the streets of Mos Espa that saves his skin. Now personally, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed with this fight scene. One, it didn't feature Boba Fett in his armor versus Black Karstantin. I mean, yes, the Hutts did say that Boba Fett should sleep lightly, so they made good on their promise that they would try and assassinate him during his sleep, but this fight between Black Karstantin and Boba Fett could have been so much more, and unfortunately it wasn't. That said, I totally understand why Jon Favreau chose to write it this way. It shows us that Boba Fett's mercy towards this youth gang pays off almost right away, and that hiring them was the right call. We as the viewers right away see that this gang is going to be loyal to Boba, and that they can handle themselves in a fight. So as disappointed as I am that we didn't get a proper fight between Boba Fett and Black Karstantin, I can see how this develops the story moving forward. And I gotta say, I was really enjoying the fast pace of this episode up until this point. Unfortunately, at this point, I think it takes a bit of a nosedive. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was cool seeing the Hutt twins again, but they actually show up to the palace to apologize to Boba and to reveal that another crime syndicate has staked a claim to the former Jabba the Hutt's territories. And because of this other crime syndicate's interest, they're actually withdrawing their claim on Jabba's former territories. And I'm not really sure if I like this twist. I mean, we've gone from thinking that the mayor was going to be the main antagonist of at least the beginning of the show, to the reveal that the twins were going to be an antagonist to Boba Fett, and now they've withdrawn and we have some other syndicate. And certainly the show is keeping us guessing, but it just seems like maybe one too many twists. And from there we see Boba Fett looking over his gift from the Hutts, a massive Rancor that he wants to learn how to ride. Now that is definitely going to be a cool scene when we see it, but at the same time I'm just not sure why we spent so much time with this Rancor and Boba Fett. If you ask me, it really slowed down the pacing of this episode, even if it does set up something cool in the future. From here we transition to Boba Fett and Fennec Shand confronting the mayor yet again. It's been revealed that he is in league with this new crime syndicate, and they discover that the mayor isn't actually in his office, and his Twi'lek assistant tries to flee the scene to keep this covered up. Fortunately for for Boba, the acquisition of this youth gang and their bikes comes in handy once again as they chase the mayor's assistant through the streets of Mos Espa, and once he's captured, he reveals that it's actually the Pike Syndicate that wants to take over Jabba's territory. And it's at this point that I need to complain a little bit about the aesthetic of this youth gang. I like the concept and idea about this gang, but they just don't look like they belong on Tatooine. I mean, if I came across this gang on Coruscant, it would make a lot more sense to me. They just have these shiny, bright colored bikes, and even their sort of steampunk cyborg outfits are just way too shiny and seem out of place on the streets of Tatooine. And unfortunately, that's all I could think about during this awesome chase scene, and so what was supposed to be the climax of this episode really fell short for me, and even the reveal that the Pike Syndicate were going to be the ones trying to contest Boba Fett for Jabba's former territories, well, even that wasn't all that exciting, and I think a big reason for that is the fact that we just get a bunch of these little munchkins showing up at the end of the show. I mean, they just don't seem all that threatening to me. I think it would have been much better if they'd shown up with some actual bounty hunters, and the episode could have left off on more of a physical threat to Fennec Shan and Boba Fett. Not to mention that we could have got a cool cameo from a bounty hunter from Return of the Jedi, or maybe someone like BK from the comics. But don't get me wrong, I do like the fact that the Pike Syndicate was set up in the flashbacks, and now here they are in the present day. I thought that was some clever writing by Jon Favreau, and it is nicely set up that they are not only a threat to Boba Fett in the present day, but that Boba sorta has this grudge from the past against them as well. Overall, this was certainly a setup episode, introducing this new youth gang and how they're going to be a major asset to Boba moving forward, but unfortunately for me, it felt like that gang maybe featured a little too much in this episode. I mean, they really do overshadow Boba Fett and Fennec Shan, and it would have been nice to see those two main characters kicking more ass. But hey, we know that episode 1 was a setup for episode 2, and episode 2 was a big payoff, and I'm expecting episode 4 to be a massive payoff as well. As I mentioned earlier, I believe the Pike Syndicate will be hiring some other bounty hunters to try and take Boba Fett out. That could be really interesting, and it would be awesome to get some of those original trilogy characters in this show. There's certainly been lots of rumors that something like that is going to happen in the show, and I think next week is when it happens. But that said, looking back at some of the predictions that were made by the community, Darth Ryan did successfully predict that we would get less flashbacks and that we'd have much more present-day action in this episode. So good job with that, Darth Ryan. JetBlast190 also predicted that Boba and Fennec will start to recruit allies, and that is something that we see in this episode, and no doubt is something that we'll continue to see in the episodes coming up, as it seems like we are going to be getting an all-out war with the Pike Syndicate. So great job with that, JetBlast190. And as I mentioned earlier, Bobby V did actually successfully predict that we'd get the Sophie Thatcher character in this episode, and he also predicted that we'd get a fight between Boba and Black Stanton. So hey, if you'd like to be part of a community predictions video coming up this Saturday, then hit that subscribe button and stay tuned to the community tab, where I'll be asking for your predictions for episode 4. That said, I'm Mike, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.